Well, Christina, all of our vials are stored in vial racks. Each rack is labeled with a rack number as well as the lowest taxonomic identification. Within each rack, the specimens are organized numerically according to the UID labels. You can see that. Each one of those numbers is unique to that specimen in our database and allows that specimen to be tracked back to its location in the collection. Now, I think we're about ready to start digitizing, okay? So let's go. All right, Christina, we're going to begin imaging our vials. So here we've got custom imaging trays that we built to fit our flatbed scanner. Now, each of these trays has been labeled with a number 1 that will correspond with the starting point here, our first tray, and also with a B and an F that will allow us to know where we started in the tray. And so we will put the front vials here and the F side of the tray, okay? So we can begin to fill these up, starting with number 1 and transferring them here. Now we want to make sure that we try and orient all the labels to one side. So you see here we've got this nice big locality label. We want to get that on one side of the tray, and we want to make sure we orient all the other vials similarly so we can try and get all the label data on one side, and then on the other side we can get a little bit of a specimen image as well as any other extra labels. As you see, there's sometimes extra identification labels as well as our UIDs floating around. So we want to get as much of that data as we can using this process. Okay? We can begin to load them in. Now this is much faster than the traditional way of capturing label data from vial collections. And it used to be that we would pull each of the labels out and lay them onto a scanning bed and image just the labels. However, as you can imagine, this could well, cause a lot of confusion. You can mix up labels, you can lose labels, you can also damage the specimens while you're doing it. This is a less invasive way of just capturing the data for upload to a collections database, or in this case, InvertNet. And this allows for rapid access to this information. It also allows you to profile your collection while you're doing it. As you're doing this, you can see if a vial is in poor condition or great condition. You see that one, the stopper is nice and it's not degraded in any way. The alcohol is pretty clear and it's topped off. So this tells you that that vial is all right for now, but you will come across vials that might need some more attention, and so this does allow for a little additional profiling while you're imaging your collection as well. Now when you reach the end of the first rack, I'm going to hand you a spacer vial. This will allow you to determine where the second rack begins. It is important that we don't mix up any of our racks here. We want to keep everything in the order that it began in. Okay. Now sometimes this will cut off the last few vials in a rack series. That's okay. Just start your next images, your next set of images using your final rack and indicate that somehow. It might be best, depending on how many are left in a rack, that you just, rather than filling up your third imaging rack with a partial of the next rack, you might end up just leaving it out and filling it in with spacers. In this case, it's about half and half, and if you just start the next one with it, it should be easy enough to figure out. So just you can make that judgment as you go. All right, well, we're ready to start imaging. What we're going to do is we're going to place these onto the scanning bed, okay? So I place front here. I can see the fronts here. You can turn it however you'd like. Just make sure that you're always aware of which side is the front, which one's number 1, and so you don't mix things up that way. And that's why it is very important to label your imaging racks. And being very gentle as you place them onto the scanner. You don't want any, sometimes these vials get a little jumpy and they go running all around, and you don't want that happening. And I want to go through and just make sure everything is oriented the way I had intended. Sometimes they shift when you're flipping them onto the scanning bed, but for the most part it looks like we're good here. Alright. And the last thing we need to do, since we can't close our scanning bed on this, or our scanning hood on this, is cover it with a piece of paper to block out any interfering light. We're ready to take the image of the first side of the vials. Begin by opening the Epson scanning software. First, we will configure the scan settings. At the top of the tool pane, select Professional Mode. Next, select Reflective for document type, and select Photo for auto exposure type. Under Destination, select 24-bit color for image type. Set your resolution to 600 dpi. The document size should be set at width 8.5 inches and height 11.7 inches. Finally, check the Unsharp Mask box. Select the Scan button. Before the scan begins, a file name must be assigned. We suggest using a naming convention that allows for easy reconciliation of images to the appropriate vial racks. Here at the INHS, we assign a name that includes the range of vial rack numbers, the taxon name, and an orientation letter, F or B, that corresponds with the front and back images. Next, make sure the image format is saved as a TIFF file. Now we are ready to scan. Here is our first image. Okay. Now that we've gotten the front side of the vials, we're just going to flip them 180 degrees to get the other side of the vials. As you can see here, we're maintaining all the labels on this side, so now we can get, in a lot of cases, images of the specimens as well as any remaining label data. If you want to flip that one, you can. Now, I should remind that the primary goal of this imaging technique is to capture all this label data and these images rapidly. It is not to produce high-quality images of the specimens themselves. A lot of times these are very small insects that you're just not going to get the best image of them. But in any case, you can get an idea sometimes of how many are in there. And with larger insects like stoneflies and things and other larger, mayflies and that nature, you will be able to get a pretty good image from them. But this goal of this is just to have rapid label data capture. Now, let's scan it again and get the back side. This time, we will append the file name with the letter B, indicating that this is the back image of the vial racks. Here are the final vial images. The vials can now be returned to their original vial racks. All right, well, that's our first set of vials. It's so quick. It's really amazing. Now these images can be associated with each other and then eventually uploaded to InvertNet, and even for just the collections purposes, parsed and assigned to that specimen's record in their database. So it's a very rapid way of taking care of this. And you can go ahead and place them back in, remembering to keep the same order. There we are. That's our first set of vials. Now we can begin to image the next set. So we image them all, and we can upload them now.